Cheers, lads. Paddy O'Leary, welcome to my dining room table, my ad hoc podcast studio. The Dipsea champion, bro. How are you?
So fun to be here across the Golden Gate Bridge, Ebo's house.
Yes.
Enjoying a beer. God, we got a guest visitor for later as well.
Yeah, this is a bit of an emergency podcast. Paddy won the legendary Dipsea race, the 112th running of the oldest trail race in the world, one of the most iconic events in the world, and an event that still has some mystery behind it and that I'm sure our listeners will enjoy learning about. Tell us about your friend Zak, who's sitting at the table with us too, real quick.
Yeah, so we got Broken Arrow coming up next weekend, which a lot of listeners might even be racing it. Zak is over here from Northern Ireland, and he's taking on the VK and the 26K. Zak was 5th at the World VK last year in Thailand, so he'll be expected to do well. But now this is my first time I get to race against Zak, and I can't wait to try hold on to him for as long as I can. I'd say I'll last about a quarter mile and then I'll be gone.
Yeah. Well, like I was just saying before we press record, you'll be riding high from the recent victory at the Dipsea. And I think even if Zak pulls away, you will be plenty satisfied with your achievement this season and your career. I mean, I was also thinking this is sort of like a walk off into the sunset type of victory for you. But anyway, Zak, thanks for being here. We'll get to you in a little while and hear all about your career and look ahead towards Broken Arrow. But Paddy, the man of the hour, the Dipsea champion. Let's first start. This is your first time on the show. I've been asking a fun introspective question with a lot of our guests, and that is just what makes you, you? What makes Paddy O'Leary the person that he is?
I think since a very young age, I've had a constant want and need to bring people together, often through sport and things like that. So that was kind of instilled in me by my parents. They were very involved in community organizing and sport. And then since my lacrosse days, my teammates at home hated me for it because I just wanted to organize and ended up setting up the first Irish lacrosse league, things like that. And then I kind of translated that into running through November Project and now through trail running.
Yeah.
So I love bringing people together, whether they like it or not.
So do you think that comes from your folks? Because I was going to say the exact same thing. You know, if I had to describe what makes you, is that you're a uniter, you're a community builder.
Yeah.
How have you learned how to do that so effectively? Because I think that's one of the things that everybody really admires about you is we all feel so comfortable around you, and you always have this infectious optimism and positivity. And you just always feel like you're with a friend, and that in all likelihood, if you're going to see Paddy, you're probably going to see a lot of other friends.
It's kind of, I guess there's two parts of it. There's one, the fact I'm from Ireland and the Irish people are infectiously kind of positive, but just having good times. Yeah. It's something you have when you ever go to Ireland. Like Zak will probably admit it as well. When you're walking down the street, get talking to someone, you sit beside them in a cafe, in a bar, you can be best friends with that person in about 30 seconds. It's something I think quite unique to Ireland, which I love. But then also, my parents were heavily involved in organizing different sporting events. My dad in running and my mother in all different types of activities, both academic and sporting. From a very young age, they were I'm the youngest of 5 kids. So they were driving us all over to get involved in these events, but they were organizing these events and training kids from all these different families in our local parish back in Southeast Ireland. So it was something I saw from a very early age, and I just kind of wanted to follow in their footsteps.
Yeah. Has it been helpful as you've lived so far away from home as an expat, as an Irishman living here in California, in the whole community building?
It helped me find my place in San Francisco. I was here about a month and I found the November Project workout group, which if many may have heard of it or may not, it's this workout group. I don't know if Brogan has been on your podcast before.
He hasn't. I'd love to have him though.
He should be at some stage. That would be a hoot. It was this fitness group that started back in 2011 in Boston, where these two lads, Brogan and Boyan, they were just wanting to find a way to keep themselves moving in the outdoors and working out in the outdoors throughout the winter. So they started running these Harvard steps every day. And then, but they just blasted out on Twitter one day saying, hey, we want more people to join us. And then over the coming weeks, it went from 2 people to 10 to 20 to 100. And then they started spreading these free workout groups to cities all across the country. And when I moved to San Francisco, I found about November Project San Francisco, run by the infamous Laura Green. And I joined that, and that was my community in San Francisco. I kind of explored our city, explored the trails of our city through that running group. I found my way into San Francisco Running Company through that running group.
Yeah.
I found my way to the North Face running team through that workout group.
Yeah.
So that kind of community created a lot for me. I started leading that community and tried to kind of use it to create a lot for everyone else around me.
What a great example that is of being a good person and being a positive member of a community, then creating opportunities for yourself.
Yeah.
So how long was it until you sort of took the leadership role with November Project?
6 months, maybe. I started in October 2013. And then the following summer, Laura's now husband, Connor, got a work secondment to Dublin. So she was moving to Ireland for the summer with him.
Yeah.
So I figured might as well put the Irish lad in charge instead. So we traded.
Switch spots.
So I took over for that summer and led that. And then when I came back, continued to lead it with her.
Yeah.
And then did that for like 4 years. That was a formative time in my life. Just kind of learned all about myself and my own leadership potential.
Yeah.
Just bringing people together and learned about trail running through that.
Yeah. And now look at you.
The city. Yeah.
Before we move off of this, I'm just reminding myself that I was talking to Levi about you. This is probably a couple of months ago, and I'm referencing Levi Miller for our listeners, who's probably the most talented runner in Marin that nobody's ever heard of. 4-minute miler. He ran at Georgetown University. He's a dear friend of both Paddy and I's. But we were talking about you a couple months ago, and the subject came up, and I think Levi sort of said something to the effect of, Paddy still basically runs with people like 4 or 5 days a week. And I think for most of us, we're trail runners, you love getting out for the group runs and whatever, but it's like a once or twice a week type of thing. Is that an accurate characterization where you're getting out with
changing over time? I think I'm starting to enjoy and appreciate the solo runs more, or maybe I've always tried to have quite a balanced life between a full-time job, between November Project, between running, between relationships, trying to juggle all these different things. I think that switches throughout time as I focus on work more, focus on things more. So the group runs, actually, I guess I'm still doing like 3 group runs a week, I would say, or maybe 2, maybe less. The November Project days, I was peaking. I was doing like 5 or 6 group runs a week because I was leading 3 of those days. I was leading it. Over time, I've started to only be able to fit in like a solo run because I might only have an hour in the morning to go run.
Yeah.
It's actually something that's got more challenging over time. And I don't have a kid or family yet. So I have no idea. I look at you guys who have kids and you're trying to fit all that into a training schedule along with a full-time job, setting up your own business.
Yeah.
I'm in awe of what you guys are doing.
It does get a lot harder.
And I'm daunted about that possibility.
Yeah, we did an event at SFRC on Thursday, and I still haven't been to a group run at SFRC. We've been back living here for 6 months, and I still haven't been able to make it. But eventually, maybe bringing this subject full circle, just sort of like thinking about the qualities of getting out with people. Mm-hmm. In what ways has that sort of like shaped you as an athlete or helped you to improve as an athlete? Just like sort of leaning on community and training partners. And
first off, to help me improve as a person, I think I just get to learn about like the diversity or the array of people you have in this sport and people from all these different backgrounds. I really appreciate that, and people's different journeys into our sport. That gives me a spark. I love experiencing that and learning about the people who love our sport. And then we've been fortunate in the Bay Area. We've got a lot of very talented runners. And like in the earlier days when I joined SFRC back in 2014, I was chasing those runners. I was going rocking up in my lacrosse shorts and a pair of shoes I got randomly, and ASICS shoes I got in the shop in Ireland before I left. And I got to improve quite quickly because I was training and chasing all of these pro athletes who were like, or the group were top 10 in Western States in 2014, 2015, whichever those years.
Yeah. And
I was like, they're just the lads. Like I didn't really recognize elite athletes in running at the sport when I joined the sport first. Because I'm like, that's just the group. That's the group run. And so I think that helped me get to a pretty good level pretty quickly because like I didn't have all of these athletes up in the stars. So the Killian who? All of that. I was just like, that's just lads who go running. Yeah.
Couple of lax bros showing up in Marin County, just trying to carve careers for ourselves. It's so true. Just like how it makes you a better person first though, and then a better athlete. I love how you said that. So we were together, I guess it was about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago in Japan, both taking part in Ultra Trail Mount Fuji, you doing the 100 miler, me doing the 70K. And I don't know if we can talk about the race a little bit, but maybe let's start with the big highlight from that trip, which was your engagement. Please fill the audience in, fill me in, because I haven't fully heard this story, and I'd love to hear.
Yeah. So
bring the mic like as close to your face. Yeah, there you go.
There you go. So a few days after after Ultra Trail Mount Fuji, myself and my then girlfriend, Eleanor Schultz, we were adventuring. We went down to see Kyoto, went to Osaka. She'd booked us in to go stay at this monastic mountaintop in Koyasan. It's the home, the kind of a spiritual home of esoteric Buddhism. And there was this famous hike. It's like the Camino and Santiago of Japan. This is like this 6-day hike. We ended up doing the final day of that, hiking 20 miles up to this mountaintop, and then stayed in a monastery up there. And we stayed in the stunning monastery. At the night, we wandered through this graveyard or mausoleum that had like 800-year-old cedar trees down to this beautiful temple, this with lanterns, lit lanterns and whatnot. And no engagement happened there, even though there was quite maybe an opportune moment. And then I'll get to explain that now in a second. The next day, that night we went and did a chanting session, and we went and did my legs were kind of messed up because I'd ran a lot the previous day. We had to do a meditation session, and we turned up because we'd done our hike up, and we finished at 4:59 p.m. at the hotel or at the monastery. And then we had to hop in at 5 to do this meditation. I can't sit in that pose in the best of times, but now after running a lot of miles the previous week, I was kind of messed up. Anyway, I'm sidetracking. The next day we were hiking down off this mountaintop, and we decided to tag this little peak. And as we were tagging that peak, we just walked down a single track at the far side, and Eleanor stopped me. She was like, "Oh, I have a present for you." And then she says, "Hey," pops out a ring, and she proposes to me, which I was gobsmacked. I wasn't expecting it. I had always marriage is something I always wanted to do, and she was still deciding. And then when she decided she was ready, as opposed to telling me it's time for you to ask me, she was like, "I'm gonna own it and take it." And she proposed to me, and I said yes. I said hi. I said all of the languages. I gave her an affirmative yes, and then we're getting married. Which I'm so excited about.
What an amazing story.
Yeah.
Meditate a little bit on the non-traditional nature of it, and about the feeling of surprise, because it feels right for you too, for Eleanor to be the one to pop the question to you.
Even on this mountaintop, she didn't realize it beforehand. We're hiking over the mountaintop about 30 seconds before she asked me. There was the mountain was called Mount Benton Dake. I might have mispronounced that. But it's the goddess who rules that mountain. That's her mountain, rules that area. That's her who looks after and is the caretaker of that area. And that's her mountain. And she's the goddess of things that flow. So then Eleanor realized that, and she's like, okay, this is particularly apt location.
Yes.
Of the non-traditional woman taking that and asking the question, and fuck the patriarchy and the proper way to do it. It's great. Eleanor is such an independent, fascinating human. It fits her to do that as well. And I love it. I definitely subtly dropped not so subtly dropped many hints over the last 3 years that I would definitely be happy to be proposed to.
Really?
Mostly joking, but also serious. So because I never expected her to. And when she did, it just blew my mind. And I love it. It's the perfect way to happen.
I mean, Zak's sitting here with us, but you're glowing too, man. And I can obviously empathize, having been in that position myself, but being the one that popped the question, it really does lighten a load, or it just brings you a sense of, I don't know, spiritual joy, And I think honestly, it helps with performance too, maybe getting ahead of ourselves here too. I mean, have you felt a physical weight lift, or just a
big time,
a sense of
big time
freedom, or
just so much? You just think you dream, and you think about you're spending your life with an individual, just having that a sense of acceptance isn't the word, the sense of of just something committing to you.
You're just excited about the future.
So excited about the future.
Yeah.
It's super cool.
Wait till you get married, dude.
I know. We're in the process of planning the wedding now, and playing the party with that, and then just thinking about the future. And we both have many exciting things going on in our life now at the moment. I just recently got my green card, so I have stability here in the US, which is huge. I can change jobs, which is something I haven't been able to do.
That takes the pressure off Eleanor too, right?
Yeah, big time. So just to be clear, she proposed to me 2 weeks after I got my green card. So this is not a green card wedding. This is, I'm not knocking anyone who gets married for a green card. I was open to doing it. This was I had the green card before the proposal. It wasn't strictly a green card wedding.
I want to hear about that too, but maybe first say a few words about Eleanor, what makes her unique and special, and maybe tie in Broken Arrow and what she's doing for that.
So Eleanor, since she's growing up like with her parents, she was a lover of the mountains from the early age. Her parents had her on cross country skis and like scrambling on rocks, and since she was like a year, she just spent her summers just adventuring around the Sierra Nevada. So she's an outdoor person. But she's an extremely talented fine artist. So she does pyrography, which is wood burning. She does these beautiful patterns on like plywood or also on natural pieces of wood, but they're always around the environment and around different mountain experiences and nature experiences. And she's also got into woodblock printing, and recently she's gone to doing mural design. She did a mural for a coffee shop up in Napa a few weeks ago that was just stunning, all based around nature and based around mainly trees. She does some beautiful tree pieces. Check her out at Insta Eleanor on Instagram.
Yeah, I'll put that link in the show notes. Yeah.
But then recently, Brendan reached out to us last year. We talked to Brendan a little bit at Broken Arrow, and he saw her stuff and was amazed by it. He reached out to her a few weeks after Broken Arrow 2022 saying, we'd love you to design the t-shirts, the buffs, and the symbols for the race, and then also design the trophies. So she's spent the last 6 weeks making the trophies for the men's and women's VK, 23K, 46K. They're super cool. They're also often trophies, you end up seeing them. They're not particularly, they're like people might put them up and they'll just gather dust or they'll put them in a box somewhere. Mm-hmm. She really wanted to make a trophy that's functional, that's useful, that people will be a centerpiece of people's homes. So she made, you'll see the photos online, but she made table lamps that are based all around the lupine plants that grow up and they grow in the High Sierra. So they're just stunning. It's super cool. But I love the circularity, the sustainability of using something that's functional and useful.
Totally.
Which we need more of that.
Yeah. I mean, how many race medals or beer glasses or t-shirts do you like have you aggregated that you'll absolutely never wear or never use?
But it's been so fun to see her bring her art into trail running. It's so I'm so stoked by it.
So awesome. Yeah. So back to the green card thing. Maybe give us a sense of what that process has looked like for you over the last several years, because you've lived in the Bay Area for how long now?
10 years now.
Yeah.
10th San Fran anniversary is next October.
Don't ever leave, man. Don't ever leave. I made that mistake for both of us.
I moved over here in 2013 for a postdoc, working at UCSF in cancer biology. But for the first 5 years, I was on a J1 visa, which is student and scholar visa. When you're on a visa in the US, you can't change jobs. You can't. Sometimes during the pandemic, I wasn't allowed to leave the country because I was from Europe and that was one of the initial COVID countries. And you have a lot of restrictions. The can't change job is a big thing because you don't really have negotiation to move to different employers. You're kind of trapped in a way. Yeah. I also enjoyed where I work, so I was lucky in that regard. After 5 years, I switched roles at UCSF to be more of a senior scientist staff role away from, I didn't want to be a professor. I'll get to a funny story about that in a second.
I saw your drama.
Yeah. So I wanted to be just a staff scientist. So switched that and had to switch visas to a H1B, which you'll hear a lot of people who come here to work in different sorts of tech sectors or academic sectors will use that, but it's the same. And also there's an end to it. So like after 3 years, I could renew it. And after 6 years, it's done. Then you have to leave the country. Yeah. Also in that you can't change jobs. So for years, I could have applied for the green card years ago, but imposter syndrome is rife across academia, rife across all of us. Yeah. Like I felt I didn't have a good enough academic record to apply for a green card, which would be like the green card I applied for was one of the national interest waiver. So I had to write an argument, it ended up being 900 pages. It weighed 13 pounds, the thing I submitted, saying about how great I am and about how the US needs to keep, it would be a huge.
Only 900 pages about how great you are.
It was absurd. Every citation that ever cited my publications, I had to put that in. It was crazy. But the one thing that really frustrated me, also that process cost me $10,000.
Wow.
So it was an expensive process. Ended up only, I started last year. I was like, okay, no, I need to just do it. So I applied, and actually I got it done, and I got it within 12 months, which seems really long, but actually on the scale of people who apply for it, that's one of the shorter ones. I have colleagues from China and India. It'll take 5 to 10 years for them to get it.
Wow.
Where they're trapped in a job or trapped in, not able to leave the country, things like that, away from their family. The immigration system is really fucked here.
Yeah.
It needs a lot of improvement, because so many of critical people in this country, from researchers to farmers,
right,
to farm workers, are just trapped because of visas. And yeah, it's
how would you like to see it change? I'm more just curious for myself, because I think, firstly, for most of the people who listen to this, right, it's mostly an American audience and American-born people who probably have no understanding or appreciation of this process. How should it be changed for people like you, who, when you told me you got your green card when we were in Tokyo, I was like, thank God, Paddy gets to stay. We need people like you.
Firstly, the process would need to be simplified. I had to create this, pay a huge amount of money and create this huge math. They make it so. If you can't
afford $10,000, are you screwed?
You could write your own one, but it could be a really most of that was for lawyer fees.
Yeah, okay.
You could write your own one, but if you make a minor mistake, it doesn't get through. There's so many hoops you have to jump through. There's so many potential mistakes you make. I feel they just make the process more challenging to get, so less people will apply for it.
Yeah,
but it then goes and sits on a desk of, I think I can say all of this now, because I don't think there's a chance of me getting kicked out.
We can edit it out.
No, I think we should keep it in. Let's keep it in. Yeah, you just need me here. Where was I going with that?
You were saying it goes to sit on somebody's desk.
Someone's desk that doesn't have a clue about. My application was strictly about very narrow areas of science.
Yeah,
they don't have a clue. They're just looking for certain things. They're looking okay, how many references are there?
Yeah.
How many referee letters? Do they have certain words, certain sentences?
Yeah, they don't understand what cancer researcher means. Yeah.
So things need to change. The process needs to be simplified, and also the national, people around this country need to recognize the importance of immigrants.
Yeah.
Especially in my situation is easier than people coming in to do farm work.
Yeah.
They're just ended up working terrible hours with little protections, and they put food on your table.
Yeah.
It's something that is really overlooked by a sizable proportion of this country.
Yeah.
I think it's changed. I grew up on a farm, so I know that. That's why I'm kind of circling around to that. I know the hardship involved in it and the importance of that work. My brother is still farming at home.
Yeah.
And you drive up and down to Monterey here, and you see our people are working the farms in the Central Valley, putting food on the table of people all across this country, and they need to be elevated.
Maybe sticking on that for a second, reflecting on your childhood growing up on a farm, that is a different upbringing that probably instills values, hard work, family orientation. How has that influenced you?
I learned about hard work. A spin to that, I'm the youngest of 5.
Right.
If my brothers heard this, they would say I was the laziest young lad. They would say, you didn't do a thing.
Are they still working on the farm?
My eldest brother owns the farm now.
Okay.
My next 2 sisters are teachers at home. And my brother is in Oslo. He's in Norway. He's an engineer there. But they'll always claim I worked the least, because I probably did work the least, but I still worked a lot on the farm. I learned a lot about hard work. I think working in the outdoors, exposed to nature, working with animals, I think that was something that I learned a huge amount from. Also being outside the whole time was great. I didn't grow up with it. I got a PlayStation, I think, when everyone else was getting a PlayStation 2. Right? We had a Sega Mega Drive when everyone else got a PlayStation, kind of that thing. So I didn't get broadband till I was doing my PhD in Dublin. I was 23 when our home got broadband. We were dialed up till then. So we didn't have all of those distractions. We just went outside and enjoyed ourselves, which is great. I think Zak will probably have a similar setup to that.
Yeah, awesome.
They were the 2 big things.
So maybe before we move on, in the spirit of you being a uniter and a positive force in the world, what's good about America, right? Because it's so easy to just be down on the world. right now. And I think you have a unique ability to articulate things to be hopeful about. And like, why did you want a green card, and what is positive about America that's stuck with you, or like, what is the United States sort of brought into your life that's positive?
I think two things. One thing, like when I moved to San Francisco, I fell in love with it immediately. It's like such a melting pot of people of all different languages. I lived in Chinatown for 8 years, and like I'd walk out in the street and like 90% of people are speaking Cantonese. Like it's wild. Like I was with you in Hong Kong, and I was walking around downtown Hong Kong, and I was like, this is literally just like outside my house.
My neighborhood.
I just don't understand a word anyone is saying. I love that. I love the melting pot of especially San Francisco, but also the US.
Yeah.
I think there's so much culture coming in here from all over the world. And then also the appreciation for the outdoors here. Appreciation of the outdoors and just the variety of like Ireland was kind of, at the time, I think I didn't appreciate the geographical variety we had in Ireland. It was when I moved to San Francisco and started exploring the outdoors did I realize what we have here, but also kind of realize what I have at home as well. I think America helped me learn to appreciate the outdoors and how to enjoy it in the outdoors, which is something I didn't really have as much before. I think I always acknowledged it, but I didn't know how to truly enjoy, embrace, respect, elevate it. And I think America helped me do that.
Awesome.
Especially Northern California, I think helped me do that.
Best place in the world.
Yeah.
Don't ever move away.
Yeah.
We haven't really talked about your running at all. Maybe before we get to the good stuff, let's go back to Japan. You were again supposed to do UTMF, the 100-miler.
Around UTMF 100K. Together, Dylan and I did the UTMF 100-miler.
I don't think it's super useful for you to just kind of recount that super painful 100K slog. But what I'd like for you to talk about more is just like figuring out what you're motivated by, because I've never gotten the sense that the 100-milers have really like spoken to you. And of course, we're eventually going to get around to you winning a 7-mile legendary race
6 weeks after attempting the 100-miler.
Exactly. So yeah, talk about that. Talk about, failure at UTMF, but more so because we talked after the race about like where your motivation really is as an athlete.
Yeah. Ever since I came to the sport late. I came to the sport at 25. I ran a bit across. My dad was big into running. He organized sport running club back home in our area of Ireland. I ran a bit across country as a kid, but it was never my main sport. Gaelic football, hurling was when growing up. Horse riding a little bit as well, and then in college lacrosse. And then I kind of came full circle back to running. Like in kind of when I was moving here to the US, I found a little bit through mountain running at home in Ireland. But when I came to November Pudging, San Francisco Running Company, I was like, oh, this is my sport. Yeah. But I kind of, even over the years, I was always doing multiple distances and never really, I started pushing. I did my first 30K, in 2015, my first 30K, 50K, 50 miler, early 2016, first 100K, and they all went really well. Then I thought, oh, obviously the logical progression that everyone has here is you go to a 100 miler. Then I said, nah, and I stopped in like 2016, and I did like Labradoe 120K in 2018, with Wicklow Round 2019, 120K, and then it was 2019 when I did UTMB. That was my first 100 miler, and no one told me it was 110 miles. I got one pass to go, and it was when my watch ticked to 100, and I was like, oh, this is what I asked for after not eating food for 15 hours. Anyway, I want to race against the best. I want to race in the highest pedestal. UTMF was, from talking to you over the years, was always one I had in the back of my mind. Also, I don't feel as attracted to going running 100 miles in Northern California. I love traveling, and one way to see a huge amount of a area is to run 100 miles through it. So like maybe it's a little bit of, it is one of the great things about our sport, you know, as speaking with the privilege of being people who've been sponsored professional athletes for a while. It is such an incredible way to explore. Anyway, what were you saying? One thing with that distance, like I feel I have the skill sets to succeed at 100 miles, but I think the last 4 years I've started dealing with the stomach thing, and I haven't been able to figure that out. Yeah. And I do want, at some stage, to nail a 100 miler. And that's why I signed up for a Fuji. It took me 3 years to want to train for a 100 miler again, and then a year into Fuji. Didn't figure it out this time. It might be another 4 years before I attempt it again. But also right after that, I'm also realizing, wait, but I'm super competitive at the shorter stuff and the medium stuff. So I said, maybe for next year, Annie, I'm going to do shorter races, less than 10 hours, which every time I say that, I'm like, that's the most ridiculous statement I've ever heard. Like a short race, like most people running a mile would be huge. That was a big thing after Japan. Like I dropped out like 13 hours in, I had the 100K mark. I hadn't eaten food in like 8 hours and 200 calories, I think. And we sat for 2 hours trying to get food into me and realized could spend 24 hours, had 30 hours to do the next 40 miles, but we're like thinking about the future and thinking about the races in the summer. We're like, maybe it'd be better to drop out. And that was unfortunately the first DNF, but I kind of have a lot of acceptance since then. I'm like, yeah, that was the right decision.
Yeah.
But I was kind of very bummed the days after. And then when I went to talk to anyone who I talked to who isn't involved in running, and many people who are involved in running, they're like, dude, you still ran 100 kilometers. And I'm like 15,000 feet of climbing. That was still huge. I'm like, oh yeah. So that's been really good. Like actually talking to people about this who are not involved in running, there's a very good like circular feedback there. They're like, yeah, you're talking nonsense. You did great.
Yeah.
So didn't win, didn't finish, but I still did a huge achievement, which I'm proud of.
Yeah. First DNF. Anything you want to say about that? Because I think for a lot of people who are listening, this is a relatable topic of conversation. It took me a while to swallow my first one too. And it was painful in the short term, but
I think leading into it, I was like, I don't want to do it. Like I fully,
because you've marched your way through a few of them.
I've marched myself through a good few of them. Yeah. Like I had 16 hours of just Coca-Cola and soup, the last 100K of UTMB back in 2016 or 2019. And then every 100K since then, anything above 10 hours, I've had that issue for 3 or 4 hours. I don't know. After the race, a day or two, I was like, yeah, no, that was fine. That was like, I'd made a decision. Yeah, I'm kind of bummed, but I got into
now I'm engaged, so no big deal.
I got into a hole for like 2 days and then we started traveling and lifted out of it. And Eleanor was actually quite concerned. She was like, oh, when am I going to propose to this guy if he's in a depressive episode after the DNF? But then I cheered up a lot. And then when she asked me that, like pulled me out of that completely. And I forgot about the race. And then also, right, she gave us an opportunity that we need to go back to Japan many times now to celebrate the place where we got engaged. And I've already like, I want to go back and just experience those people again. Like our hosts from TNF Goldwyn were just spectacular. Kohei and Natsuki they had so much fun with Eleanor Kurumi throughout the night. Maybe I'll go back for the 70K next year and I'll finish the 70K I didn't do.
It's a good hard 70K.
It's funny though, actually. So I dropped out at 6 a.m. Dylan was doing the 70K, which started at 11 a.m. Did cross my mind to start that with you guys and not keep up, obviously. But it did cross my mind to finish it the next morning. But it's funny.
Like, just have to go back.
Yeah. When I dropped out, went home, slept for 3 hours. And then within an hour, I was eating udon noodles and I was fine. I was like, why? But yeah. I've accepted it. I've moved on. Ready for the next battles.
And now you're a Dipsea champion. So let's talk about that. So the Dipsea, man.
Greatest race in the world.
Greatest race in the world. What a wild, different, savage, nasty, beautiful event it is. Please.
It's perfectly chaotic.
Please, as somebody who's a multiple time finisher and who I know is steeped in the history and well read on the subject, if you could just give the audience a glimpse into what makes Dipsea unique, like specifically focusing on the format and the history.
The format of it, I just love that it's the great equalizer. So they separate, there's a handicap start where they start, I might get the numbers wrong, but at 8 a.m., the 80-year-old above men, 60 above women, 8 below girls, 6 and below boys start. And then every minute for 25 minutes, they let off a new batch of runners. With the older runners or the really youngest runners ahead of the runners, the last group they let off is the 20 to 25-year-old men. Women start a little bit ahead of men. They tailor it every year. So like the best of each age group and each gender will finish right around the same time. And it's whoever crosses the line first wins. So
the idea is for the listener that basically anybody goes into it and can win.
It's had 10 years ago or 12 years ago on the 100th anniversary, there was a battle between 8-year-old Riley Johnson and 68-year-old Melody Schultz. And they were starting the first wave and they were neck and neck the whole race. And it's actually, there's a video on YouTube, the Dipsea Centenary, and I'd recommend watching it. It might be in multiple parts on YouTube. Find it, watch it, and it's just amazing. The race is perfectly chaotic, like, because it's like they have 1,500 people. They start the slowest people first, and they let them off in 7 miles of poison oak laden, root laden single track. It's idiotic. It's absolutely idiotic. Like, there's going to be chaos. There's going to be people hurt, but people have so much fun.
Yeah.
Like the first year I did it, also the first year you do it, they give you a 25-minute penalty. So you have to kind of earn your way in. You have to finish in roughly the top 50% to requalify for the invitational section the following year. So like that first year I started in like 1,400 place, and I passed 902 people to finish 499. And like passing 900 people in a 50-minute window is just chaos. And it's so much fun. You're like on your left, on your right, you're elbowing, you're brushing, but everyone's just enjoying. You're saying, "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you." It was pretty. It's just unbelievable. And it's a race that's been going on for 112 years in North America, at least. The Boston Marathon is the only race that's older.
Yeah, I actually have the Wikipedia up here because I figured we may want to get around to just kind of enlightening the audience about the history. So what it says here, I'm again just reading straight off the Dipsea race Wikipedia. On a rainy November 19th, 1905, the first Dipsea race was held on a 7.4 mile course with 110 runners. The members of the San Francisco Olympic Club from the Mill Valley Train Depot to the then Dipsea Inn on a sand spit now called Sea Drift in the Bolinas Lagoon between Stinson Beach and Bolinas. Taking place annually, only being canceled a few times in its history, 1932, 1933, due to the race not being able to earn enough funds to be financially viable due to the Great Depression, 1942 to 1945 due to World War II, and 2020 due to COVID.
Yeah.
So that is the history of the Dipsea. Absolutely insane.
It's funny, like prior to 1965, they just had a person who was assigned as the handicapper, and he would assign everyone on what he thought they could run. So like there was no age or at the time it was only men are allowed to do it. So there was no age handicapping. It was just like, oh yeah, you could run a 45.
There was handicapping.
No, he did the handicapping.
Oh, okay.
He handpicked them. Then in 60s, they brought in, they allowed women to run it, and they also brought in the official age handicap. That's how it is now. And that's kind of how it's been for like 70 years.
I just want to
60 years.
Add one more bullet point here from 1905. It says more than 100 runners registered. What the Examiner proclaimed the greatest cross-country run that is ever held in this or any other country. Oakland high schooler John Hassard arrived at the inn first with Cornelius Connolly, one of the only two scratch runners, in second. So an Oakland high schooler won in 1905.
God.
That's the history that you're part of, dude. Holy shit.
Unbelievable.
Tell the people.
When I crossed the finish line, and the guy holding the tape, he won it in 1968.
Right. Yeah. I want to get around to that. Before we get to that, maybe talk a little bit about the entry process for the race, because I entered myself. I have never run the Dipsea. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I entered, I think it was like 2016, and did the whole bribery thing, and then realized I had to go to a wedding that weekend.
Oh, no. So there's 1,500 spots. There's 700 spots are invitational from the year before, or it might be 750 from the top people from the year before, the top 50% roughly. And then on March 7th or March 6th, they release a PDF now online. You print it out, you put in your entry check, you mail it into the Mill Valley PO box. And the first 300 that get picked out of that PO box are in. And then the remainder they have some spots, some like volunteer spots, some spots they have a bid an auction the day before, but there's about 350 are in a lottery. But your chances can be improved if you bribe. So if you throw in an extra $100, your chances of getting in will be improved. The great thing about it, that all the money that's raised by the Dipsea goes to the Dipsea Scholarship Fund, which gives like several $1,000 scholarships to high school kids to go to college. Mm-hmm. High school kids who participate in volunteering with the Dipsea over their childhood years, which is super cool. Also, your chances of success in the lottery can be increased if you write an effective sob letter. So if you can convince them why they think they should, like you deserve to get in, what's your story, what's your background, do you have a fascinating story to tell?
Yeah.
And they actually released an article this year with a few examples of the stories, and it's super cool.
Yeah.
It's super cool. I tried like 2 years, couldn't get in. And the third year I got in 2019. My housemate at the time was part of the Dolphin Club, which are a swimming group that have done it for decades. And they put me into their application, and we got in mass as a group. So that's how I got in the first time. Shout out to the Dolphin Club. Thank you.
Shout out to the Dolphin Club. So a few months ago here in Marin at Proof Lab, the iconic surf shop in town, you hosted a wonderful event. It was a dedication to the history of the Dipsea. You gathered a lot of the characters from the event's history, past, present, future. You told the story in an immaculate way. You showed some cool films. Talk about that evening, because I think it's also representative of you being a uniter in your core, and also maybe introduce us to like some of those legends.
Yeah. So that was something I've really, like, I may not mention, we may get into it or may not. I've been involved in a couple of filmmaking processes over the years, and I just love storytelling. It's an Irish thing. The Irish, we love, we have the gift of the gab, we call it. We just love telling stories. So we love bringing people together to listen to stories. It's been steeped in our culture for millennia. So that's something I've always loved doing. And then the Dipsea is just something I was so super passionate about. A good friend of ours, Alex Massey, he just released a film about Markel Taylor from the 1,000 Mile Club in St. Quentin. He does the Dipsea every year. I saw him this year, actually.
I don't think he did it this year.
Okay. Yeah. So Markel Taylor, he did the story about Markel, a beautiful short film about Markel doing the Dipsea. So we wanted, like Alex said, filmmakers are often the worst promoters of themselves. I've said the same thing with Ryan Scurr and Dylan Lads of Dooster, the films we've made. Like, I've been the person promoting the story because like they make beautiful stories, but then they can't tell people about it.
See, you should be promoting their films, and they should be promoting your green card application.
Big time. There's a story. I'll tell you about that in a second. But yeah, I just wanted to. I was like, Alex, all right, I'm going to organize a premiere, a Bay Area premiere of your film, because it's a beautiful film. The Bay Area needs to see it. It's buried on Vimeo. They won't see it. They need to see it in person with you there. Then from that, I'm like, but I don't want to bring people out for a 5-minute film. So I'm like, all right, we'll show a few more films. Then we're like, wait, we've all these amazing characters around the Dipsea. Let's bring them out and do a panel. And we're like, when should we have it? Let's do it the week before the Dipsea entries open. So if we have 200 people showing, we can convince them they all should sign up for the race. So that's what we ended up doing. We had it like 6 days before the entries opened. And we did a speaker panel with a fascinating panel. We had Carolyn Latham, who has done the Dipsea. I think this year was her 11th time. She did it first as like a 10-year-old. She got her first black shirt, which is an award for the top 35 finishers.
Where did she finish?
Last year she finished like 32nd. This year she was like low 20s, 21st maybe.
Nice.
With Alex Varner, who has been the fastest split time of the Dipsea for 9 times. So
explain that. So for the audience, the winner is almost never the fastest runner in the field.
Yeah.
We'll get to being an anomaly.
So there's your clock. So when you start, they start the clock when the scratch runners leave. So that's at 8:25 when the 20 to 25-year-old runners leave. But some people are after starting 25 minutes before. But your clock time includes kind of your handicap. So that will be like, for me, my clock time was it's a very confusing thing to explain.
Yeah. So I mean, to make it simple, like Alex Varner has been the fastest. Yeah.
So his fastest split time, he was the fastest person. He was the fastest person to run it, but that doesn't include all the handicaps he had.
So, meaning he didn't cross the finish line first, but he was the fastest person to cover the 7 miles.
Yeah.
Anyway, going back to the panel and the legends and
so Alex Varner, he was 9 times. He was the fastest person to complete the course. Didn't include his handicap and whatnot, so he didn't end up winning it those times. He finished like 10 seconds behind the first place multiple times. But he's just a fascinating part of the Marin running community. He was someone I really looked up to in the Marin running community. I learned a huge amount from him. I continue to learn a huge amount from him.
Same.
And he's just a great speaker and a great storyteller. So he just had so many fun stories to tell. And then we had the Dipsea storyteller, the Dipsea historian, the Dipsea finish line announcer for the last, I think, 40 years, maybe, Barry Spitz, along to speak. So it was a fascinating panel, and we just asked questions about the history of this race, about people's experience with the race. And Barry's actually released a book, which he's done multiple copies of it. Dipsea, The Greatest Race. I'd recommend buy it.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah. I did buy one like 3 months ago, and he hasn't given it to me yet.
Come on,
so
Barry.
I'm gonna have to go knocking some doors.
It's like I'm a champion now. Is there part of you who feels that was some good karma attached to that event, or a conspiracy of the cosmos to give you a little wind at your back this year? Because I don't know. To me, it feels like a little bit of a spiritual coincidence, right? You hosted this incredible evening. I was riveted. I just stood in the back in this dark skateboarding arena, more or less.
So there could be karma there that I win it just after I elevated the event. But this happened to me 4 years ago. I went home to film a documentary on the Wicklow Round.
Yeah.
And I ended up on that trip home. I set the record at the Wicklow Round. It's a 26, you have to do 26 peaks in less than 24 hours route in like rough mountain Ireland. I set the record at that. 6 days later, I lost the record by 3 minutes. The 16 hours, 27 minute record, Shane Lynch from Louth came in and knocked 3 minutes off that record.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there is karma, because then I'm waiting, what's going to happen in 6 days? Are they going to disqualify me for the Dipsea? Because I'm just waiting for that to happen, because I've had this happen before and it hasn't worked out. So I don't think it's associated.
Okay.
No, I think I would have. I think, yeah. Let's separate that.
Okay, we'll separate that.
Yeah. Who's going to break my record?
So last year you were second behind Eddie Owens. And he was the fastest runner in the field and also won the race. Mm-hmm. You were the same this year. Eddie Owens had to pull out because of injury. He was also supposed to be on Team USA over in Innsbruck.
Two events
last week. So shout out to Eddie. It's too bad he wasn't able to compete. So maybe with that as the backdrop, tell us about this year's race. Because, all right, so I have your Strava up on my computer. I may share screen here while you're talking too, so the people who watch this on YouTube can get a sense of like a little bit of the race report. But I mean, you opened up hot out of the gates. And
I'll tell you why I opened up hot. I'm talking, so myself and Jeff Stern, who was both starting from the Y corral, which is the 34 to 42-year-old corral. We have a 2-minute head start. We're standing at the start line and we're talking about, we're both doing Mount Marathon in a few weeks. And we're saying, oh yeah, getting excited. Oh, I'm scared shitless. Oh yeah, all of that. And then I just hear 2, 1, go. Like, what? And then I just took off. And I'm like, oh, no one's beside me. And I just kept going. So like I ended up putting like 10 seconds on everyone within like 200 meters or something absurd like that. No, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but like gapped everyone very quickly. And they're like, what the fuck is Paddy doing? And I hit the stairs and I kept going. And I started feeling so, like from the very start, I was feeling really weird, lightheaded. I'm like, sick. Am I bonking already? What's wrong? Like, I don't feel like I'm moving fast. I'm passing people and I'm gapping everyone else. Ben Koss, I passed him after the third flight of stairs, about 100 meters after the third flight of stairs, which is less than a mile into the race. And he's like, he said to me, he was like, oh, this is the same place Eddie passed me last year.
Did he start a minute ahead of you?
Or a minute ahead of me.
Okay.
And I was like, weird. But I was like, I was still feeling really weird. I'm like, I think I'm dying. I don't think I'm going to do well in this race. Retrospectively, and actually at the time I started after 2 or 3 miles, I'm like, okay, I'm still having that feeling, but I think I'm in the zone. And I'd never been there before. It was like weird. I had this such a weird feeling. It was like,
was it like focus or?
I think it was.
Yeah.
It was, well, it was focused, but then I was just thinking about what was happening to me. And I was like, but I'm still moving so well, moving so fast, beating all of my splits at the Dipsea, on the Dipsea course. I'm like, the hell? And then, so you're
so before you go on, I just have your Strava up in front of me here, and you split 8:16 for the first mile, which has 600 feet of climbing. So your gap pace on Strava is 5:05 opening up the Dipsea.
Passing 300 or 400 people on a set of stairs, the width of the table.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to even describe what that first mile is like to somebody who's never run the Dipsea.
On your left. No, coming in between. Stop pausing, waiting for someone to move. So yeah, it's kind of weird. It's kind of wild. And then there was you go and you crest over the first hill and you descend down some technical trail, come down embankment onto a road. Then you've about a half mile of road. Yeah. I was like doing 430s along that. And I might have passed, probably in the first mile and a half, I probably passed 400 people, 500 people, which is kind of wild when you think about it, when a lot of it was on single track. About half on single track, half is on single stairs. But then hit the first shortcut down into Muir Woods, which is around mile 2.5. And I was like, yeah, I'm running faster than previous years. And then I'm like, okay, no, it's on. I'm in the zone. That's what we're doing. All right, let's go. I was concerned about, there was a guy starting a minute behind me in a 27-year-old, Fred Huxham, who was a Northern California All-American at the 2-miler. He ran at UW, I think ran their cross-country team. He is like a 28-something 10K runner. And he's been doing workouts on cardiac and like setting records on that. I'm like, all right, this guy's likely to catch me. But then I hammered up cardiac. I ran the exact same time as last year, actually, but I think I ran so fast at the start that gave me a good buffer. But kept passing people earlier than I expected.
So I got to share the screen again because you mentioned cardiac, and our mutual great friend Kim Gaylord was up there. So I was out for a huge run myself that day. So Kim was keeping us appraised via text message, and she said that you were like 5.5 minutes back at cardiac. I think you were in like
6.5 back.
6.5 minutes back at cardiac. So you're like
11th place.
5 miles.
That's
in.
the only thing I remember running through cardiac. I didn't see a single face. I was just shouting.
So you're 4 miles in there. And for those who are watching on YouTube, this is where my cursor is here. 6.5 minutes back, 4 miles into a 7-mile race. And I think you were in like 11th place at that time. Describe the vibe there at cardiac. And like,
I don't remember it. I didn't see a single person. I think I saw 2 faces.
Kim said that she gave you...
I heard her voice.
Yeah, okay.
I heard Fernando's voice, and I saw Chris Toburn's face. And that's all I saw out of the 200 people that were there. Sorry to all my friends who were cheering for me. I knew you were there. I think, I don't know, retrospectively found out you were all there. But I was just in the zone.
In the zone.
And Fernando was like, wow, you were shouting pretty aggressive. Like, where is she? Where is she? Because I knew the chase was on. You only have 2.5 miles of downhill to catch people. Yeah. You got to move.
2.5 miles to make up 6.5 minutes. So where did you catch?
So then I started.
Diana and Chris Lundy?
Well, the person I passed one of my favorite people that did the course is Misha Shamakin, our friend. His mom, who is 66 years old, maybe. Sorry, or 62, something in her 60s. She's won a black shirt a couple of years. I passed her at 10. She ended up getting passed by 3 teenagers. So she ended up being pushed to 36th place. The 3 teenagers at the finish line. That was hard.
Let's come back to talking about the black shirts.
So cardiac, 11th place, 6.5 minutes to go. My friend communicated with me when I didn't see them. So I just kept moving. I had you have like a half a mile of flat rolling, and then you're down through the most technical shortcut. Then you're onto the steep ravine stairs, and then you've about 1.5 miles of fire road and a short bit of road to the finish. Still a little bit of technical stuff and turns and whatnot, so you can't really roll really hard. Passing people, and every person I was passing, they were like, "Go, Paddy," and I was like, "Go, you! Let's go! Let's keep going." And then I passed into 3rd place just after the bottom of the climb called Insult, where you come down off the steep ravine stairs around mile.
For those who are watching on YouTube, I've got my cursor here.
5.5 maybe? Yeah. 5.5?
5.5 exactly. Yep.
So they have this 30-foot climb, which is really fucker at that time. I passed Julia Maxwell there, and she was like, when she heard me coming, she was like, "Oh, fuck," because she had great hopes of winning it. And she was like, "Oh, fuck." But then she was cheering me on. I was cheering her, past her, up over, then you go through the moors, which is there's some switchbacks, but there's quite a wide fire road. And as I got into around mile 6, maybe, I go around this long switchback, but I look over at the road I'm going to be running onto, and there's this tiny little climb up, and I see Diane Fitzpatrick, who was leading at the top of cardiac, and I see Chris
two-time champion,
2014. Chris Lundy, 2-time champion, 2017, 2018, I think. They were there, and I saw Chris chasing Diana. She was going to pass Diana, and I was like, okay, they're 400 meters away. I'm going to catch them. I hope no one's going to catch me. Because Chris had that same thing in her mind. She's like, I'm catching Diana now. I hope no one's going to catch me. There's a little tiny 20-foot climb there that's really rough at about 6.25. And Chris was passing Diana just as she crested that. Just as I was passing her, Chris was like, yes. And said it was the shortest lead she's ever had in the Dipsea, in about a second or 2 seconds. But it was such a cool moment, the 3 of us crossing that crest together. because everyone loves like seeing each other succeed as well. That's a great thing, the beautiful thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I passed them like, oh God, I'm winning.
You're going to win.
Yeah. I wasn't like, I'm going to win.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have a sizable chance of winning. Everyone keeps asking me, when did you know you had it? I'm like, 100 meters from the finish.
Right.
I'm like, I could fall, I could cramp. Someone could catch me. Alex Varner's back there. Fred Huxham's back there. Jeff Stearns back there. These lads could all catch me. Matt Seidel. Or Chris could come charging.
Yeah.
But then when I jumped down onto the road, which is about a quarter of a mile from the finish, I was like, okay, I think I might have it. And people were going wild. When I turned the corner, actually Barry Spitz announced like towards the last straightaway, I looked back to Facebook and I think they hadn't realized I'd made the pass. They didn't realize I was in contention for the top three. They were saying the three ladies. And then he came to the corner. He's like, Paddy O'Leary. He's like, I'm Paddy O'Leary.
He's surprised.
He was shocked. And then, went and crossed the line and won the damn Dipsea.
You won the damn Dipsea.
Yeah.
When Kim texted me, she texted a chain that we have with her and Harmony and I was out like, in the middle of a 5.5 hour epic myself. And I was just like goosebumps, like, oh my God, Paddy won the race. And I texted you immediately. I said, dude, we got to do a podcast. So anyway, I just want to pull something up here too. Couple stats. Okay. So
that last mile was like a 450, I think, as well, with a single track jump over a stile.
Yeah, let me check that.
To the road.
Yeah, you were doing 4:57 pace that last mile. But the thing that I wanted to mention, going back to Eddie Owens winning last year, again, he was the fastest runner in the race and he won the Dipsea. And the stat that I have here is that Owens became the first Dipsea champion in their 20s since 25-year-old Carl Jensen won it in 1966. So that's a fun little stat for Eddie Owens. Again, shout out to him. And then I just wanted to list the top 6 this year's race because I think it's emblematic of what makes the Dipsea amazing. So, of course, our esteemed guest here, Paddy O'Leary, wins the race. And you ran a 90-second PR. We'll come back to that maybe in a sec. Julia Maxwell, second, 27-year-old woman. Chris Lundy, third, 52-year-old woman. Diana Fitzpatrick, fourth, 65-year-old woman, also the president of the board of the Western States. Shout out to Diana. Clara Peterson, 39-year-old woman, in fifth. And then Audrey McLean, 17-year-old woman, in sixth. So 5 women in the top 6. Paddy O'Leary wins the race, and an age stratification between 17 and 65. It's so awesome. It's so awesome, isn't it?
So cool. So cool to see that.
Yeah.
Audrey I mentioned Dipsea scholarship. She actually received the Dipsea scholarship. She's been involved in the Dipsea for years. 2 nights before she'd received her Dipsea scholarship to go to college. Wow. I think she might be going to Middlebury. MI was the abbreviation of the university. She might be going to college next year. So that's cool to see the cyclical nature of the event.
So we should bring Zak in here soon, but you've done a lot. Like you were on the Irish national lacrosse team. You've done a lot of incredible races. Where does this stack up in terms of lifetime achievements for you?
It's even participating in the Dipsea alone is so great. It's so spectacular to do it. Honestly, I think this is huge. The 2019 running the Dipsea from the penalty section and being the first runner there and passing 1,000 people, that's close to there. That was a super enjoyable experience too. And I was like, oh, that is what inspired my love for the Dipsea. But now to finally win it, it's absurd. I think there's 3 things in my life. I think finishing UTMB after my ridiculous epic, the Dipsea, finally getting to win this. Finally, I'd say I've won it within 4 years. A lot of people have been doing so well at this. I was fortunate I was able to win it so quick. And then getting to a European lacrosse final, happening in the Irish lacrosse team. And actually a fourth is getting to play against the Iroquois Nationals in World Box Lacrosse Championships, the founders of lacrosse, the sport, and the Native American team. It's that's still not, again, to play against them is still my number one sporting moment, again to play against the Iroquois. We should talk about that real quick because the two of us have a deep appreciation for the game of lacrosse. Yeah. And the Iroquois national team, as you alluded to, they refer to it as the creator's game. And there's sort of like a spiritual nature, a spiritual character that they bring to the field.
humility, sportsmanship, work ethic,
Respect for nature.
respect. And it's a beautiful thing. And aside from the US and Canada, the Iroquois Nationals, who compete under their own flag, are the third best team in the world. Yeah. And the two best players in the world are
brothers, cousins.
Yeah, brothers. Yeah. The Thompson brothers. Yeah. Unbelievable.
It's unreal. Yeah, the Iroquois Nationals, they're now called the Haudenosaunee Nationals. They renamed because Iroquois was a name that was assigned by the colonialists. So now they're going by the traditional name. They had, I apologize, I can't pronounce it correctly because it's got a hell of a lot more initials or more vowels than an Irish name, which is pretty hard. Haudenosaunee. They compete and they actually hosted I retired from lacrosse in 2014 because I was wanting to focus on running. And in 2015, they hosted in upstate New York on the reservation. Yeah. They hosted the World Indoor Games. And that one of my biggest regrets in sport was not playing in that.
Wow.
When the sport came home. It's super cool. Yeah, that was a sport where I evolved. Playing that sport and learning the respect from that game was where I evolved as a sportsman, I think, as an adult as well.
Yeah.
I think I learned a huge amount from it. And I think often in the US, people don't realize that it's America's indigenous game.
Yeah.
It's North America's indigenous game. Internationally, because we get to see them, we all elevate the Iroquois Nationals, the Haudenosaunee Nationals are the players we look up to. Wow, they're the best players in the world. Often that might be overlooked by the general population of America because they think, it's a French sport, it's lacrosse, the closure. The French colonialists named it lacrosse because they saw it looked a bishop's crozier.
Yeah.
Or bishop's cross. I'm going to go back to play that. We're going to go back to play that. So as I'm getting older, I know I'm going to have...
Bring your stick up to Tahoe. That's my tradition.
I know I have many years of Dipsea ahead of me, but I know I'm going to get slower.
Yeah.
At the World Games and at many tournaments, they have Masters lacrosse games, which Mike Wardian has competed in, I think, which is absurd. Over 35 is Masters, over 45 is Grandmasters, then over 55, they have a Super Grandmasters tournament. We're entering the Ultra Runners lacrosse team into that. Got Dylan Bowman on midfield.
Yeah.
Got Mike Wardian on attack. Cody Reed used to play high school. He could play attack. Claire Gallagher was a goalie, I think, in high school. She'll play. I'll play. Matt Mitchell here in San Francisco and Eric Soley, Olivia Amber's partner. They both played high school. There's more out there. We're going to entertain. We're going to compete in the Vale shootout, which is one at elevation, and we're going to run rings around everyone. When they hit us, we're going to break in half. But if they can't catch us, they can't hit us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enough lacrosse talk. Yeah. Before we bring Zak in, maybe quickly, just how does this victory impact next year's Dipsea? Because I think this would be fun for the audience to understand the penalty attached to it. Yeah,
so it started in the 80s because there was one runner who had won it so many times. They started doing a penalty for winners. So they introduced initially it was 3-minute penalty for the first year after, 2 minutes the second year, 1 minute the third year after you won. Now they have it for the 3 years after you win, you have a minute penalty. So you're bumped back 1 grade. So next year, the next 3 years, I'm going to start the race with the 25 to 30 year olds. Eddie Owens, for example, next year, he's still in that bracket, but he will carry his minute penalty. So this year he would have been starting from scratch.
Okay.
Starting for the 20 to 25 year olds.
How much did you win by?
I won by 45 seconds.
Okay.
Eddie would have had to run a 30-second beyond record.
So you wouldn't have won this year with that?
I would have won unless he would have ran a 90-second PR probably.
So Julia Maxwell would not have beaten you?
Well, sorry, what do you mean?
This year, if you won by 45 seconds.
If I had the minute penalty,
right,
I would not win it. No.
Right. Okay.
Next year, I will not win.
So it's good.
I will not win the race next year. If I finish top 5, that'd be huge.
So in case it's not obvious.
I could get faster.
That's
Benjamin Button.
There you go.
Getting faster as we go.
90-second PR this year.
Next year. When I started running road marathons, my first one was 2:45. My second was 2:37. My third was 2:30. My fourth was 2:20. I was getting that progression. It was getting bigger every year. When I did the TNF50 for the first time, I went 13th, 9th, 5th. And then the year was cancelled. It was the best shape of my life. It was the year I was going to win it. And I told I Run Far I was going to win it next year, and they called me out on it. Maybe that'll happen with the Dipsea.
Yeah, maybe
45.
I mean, you're well on your way to being one of those legends, you know, when we are 55 fielding a super masters lacrosse.
I'm a short distance runner in an ultra runner's mindset. I should be focusing on short distance stuff because I think it's probably what I'm best at.
Yeah.
But I love ultras.
Well, I mean, that's the variety is the spice of life, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Paddy, dude, you're the best, man. Congratulations. You so deserve it. And I'm so glad you're here to share the story with us.
I'm really delighted to kind of be part of this conversation and grateful for all you're doing for the community of it, just uplifting these stories and like putting our sport like in the greater view of the world. Really appreciate it. But one thing that like with what you're doing, what we're all doing is we're bringing the community. Like the beautiful thing about this sport is that everyone who's participating, like often sports, you have the elites and then you have everyone else. Ultra running, and I hope mountain running, hope it continues that everyone is in it together.
Right.
People of all different speeds, all different ages. Golden hour in 2 weeks. Biggest crowd is not going to show up for the winner at 15 hours, probably 16 this year. They all think they're going to run fast, but there's 30 miles of snow, so they probably won't. The biggest crowd is going to show up for the golden hour 30. And I love that about this sport.
Amen. Amen. In that spirit, Paddy, and in the spirit of you being a uniter, please introduce us to Zak. I've turned his microphone on. I handed him the mic. He's here in Northern California, your fellow Irishman. You persuaded him to come over. So maybe introduce us to Zak. And then
as I introduce Zak, I want to apologize that when I talk to an Irishman, my accent gets a lot stronger. And the Irishman I'm talking to has quite a strong accent, and his accent always gets stronger when he talks to an Irishman. So Dylan's going to take care of the subtitling for the video for people listening. Apologies. So we've got Zak Hanna here, County Down's finest up in Northern Ireland. He's been Ireland's kind of shining light the last 10 years in mountain running. He just back in Thailand, he just came 5th in the VK at the World Championships. He's finished in the top in the podium at the World Mountain Running Association World Cup for 2 years. He's the best mountain runner we have in the country, and he's here to race here for the first time in America to take on the Broken Arrow VK 26K, 23K this weekend.
Yeah, it's great to be here in America. First time visiting, and thanks, Paddy, for that glowing introduction. I'm a bit red here now because of that.
You didn't say the introduction. You were meant to say, "What about you?" Hi.
Don't want to put the listeners off.
That's a good point.
Because
but the 5 people in Northern Ireland you have would understand.
So Zak, it's funny, dude, because this is the first time we've met, and again, we're sitting at my kitchen table, but I've heard your name like so many times recently, and it feels like you're sort of like really on the precipice of like sort of entering the upper echelon of the sport. And I think you represent like kind of this new generation, and you're focused more on the shorter distance stuff. So maybe just quickly, and we're going to do a panel at Broken Arrow in a few days. So we'll do a deeper dive with Zak there, and maybe we'll spend a little bit more time on the Dipsea with Paddy. But Zak, maybe just quickly just introduce yourself to the audience and tell us about your history with sport and with running.
Yeah, well, Paddy, where I started off there, I come from County Down, which is in Ireland, Northern Ireland, whichever way you want to put it. I am 27 years old, and I would say my way into the sport wasn't too dissimilar to Paddy's. He came from a farming background. I wouldn't say I was a pure farming background. I came from a horse riding background and a cycling background. Grew up in rural Northern Ireland and just grew up in the outdoors. Same as Paddy. Didn't have a PlayStation. Didn't want one essentially, and grew up in the great outdoors. And my whole life just has revolved around it. And it just so happens that I've just came to a sport that's enabled me to see the world and meet so many great people and see so many unreal places. And that's really it. It's been great since I've started the sport, and I just absolutely love it.
Yeah. So you were 5th at the vertical in the World Championships in Thailand. I think you were in the 20s this year in Innsbruck. Maybe paint the contrast between those two, because I looked at your Instagram and you said something about how you were less than satisfied with this year's performance, but last year really kind of put you on the map internationally. So maybe tell us about those two experiences.
Yeah, well, I think off the back of Thailand, like I'm a serious competitive person. I do put a lot of pressure on myself to perform at my best every time I race. And I think going into Innsbruck, I didn't let anyone know, but in my head, I was putting myself under quite a lot of pressure. And I went out to Innsbruck a week before the race to allow me to recce the course and just take, instead of having to arrive 2 days before with travel and whatnot. But even though I did go out a week before during the traveling, I picked up the virus, woke up the next morning, head cold, blocked nose, coughing, and went out for a jog, felt absolutely rubbish. That's whenever kind of the nerves set in. It's going to take a lot of work to get rid of this.
Yeah.
And come Sunday, thought I had got rid of it, but it was clearly still in my system. Come race day, legs were dead at the start. And the first kilometre, which normally on the faster stuff I can cope well with, but it was just a slog. And yeah, there's people passing me who normally, no disrespect to them, shouldn't be passing me. And yeah, crossing the line in 27th was huge disappointment. But as I say, the community that we have in this sport, especially within the Irish team that last week, was just unbelievable. And within, I'd say, an hour finishing that race, I put it behind me, and the rest of it was just on to support the rest of the team in the 42k, the 80k, and the up and down races. So yeah, it's just you learn from your worst losses. So hopefully this will be the last one for a while.
Yeah, hopefully that virus is out of your system. Can you guys talk a little bit about Irish pride, Irish sporting?
Well, Dylan, that question, Irish pride is a bread manufacturer in Ireland. That's actually the brand. So they
Really?
see Irish pride trucks driving around.
That's true.
Irish pride. So it's average quality sliced white bread.
But I mean, like,
you care to elaborate on that question? I'm more of a sourdough man myself.
Yeah, right. I'm an MHBB guy, I mean, because I don't know. Obviously, like you said, like in Ireland, it seems like there's like the culture of like storytelling and bringing people together, and I feel like, Paddy, you exemplify that. Zak, we're just meeting for the first time, but I know you've competed for Ireland in both lacrosse and trail running, and I know that's brought you a lot of pride. And anything you guys want to share about just like coming from like a small Northern European country?
5 million people. I think we just hit 5 million for the first time since famine. We're a tiny country and we're competing at the best level in many sports. Like we're world number one in rugby at the moment, going into a World Cup. With many new sports like hockey, running, track and field. We just had Rashidat, just one of our runners. We have a 400-meter runner. She's 20 years old. She just won the NCAA title this weekend.
Oh, she's Irish.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Nigerian born, moved to Ireland in 3. She has the strongest Dublin accent. You think our accent? You think Zak's accent as well?
Where does she go to school?
Like
Arkansas or something?
She's Texas.
Texas.
And she has the strongest Dublin accent still. And if she stays in America, I hope she doesn't lose it, because I hope I don't lose mine. Yeah. We're a small country and we like punching above our weight.
Yeah.
Whether that be in sport, whether that be in literature, whether that be in world politics, whether that be in anything, acting, everything. We like punching above our weight. We like, I don't know. I think we underwent so many centuries of hardship. Now when we got like freedom, we just wanted to just spread ourselves all over the world, and like, I don't know.
It builds character, doesn't it? Hardship builds
character.
Hardship
brings character. We're on the west coast of Europe and a lot of storms. The weather isn't great. We've a lot of like, it's easy to get depressed where we live, but we just, I think we, I don't know. What do you think, Zak?
Yeah.
We just like elevate. We just like,
I think the beauty of like Ireland itself is that you don't have to go too far to find someone who knows someone else that you know. Everyone seems to know each other. And especially where I live, I find it's just incredible. Like you just go so far, but yet you're never too far away from an Irish person. Funny story, last week in Innsbruck, the Irish team had arrived last Monday night. So we all went for a team dinner in Neustift, and we had packed out the restaurant, and I was actually in the next part of the restaurant talking to Carly and Andy Wacker. So that was fine. I talked to them for maybe 10 minutes, and then my dinner arrived. So I went and sat down ate my dinner. Next thing, I had a tap on the shoulder, and this woman, elderly woman, said to me, "Excuse me, sir, son, are you a Belfast boy?" She had the same accent as me. And I said, "Not quite Belfast, but whereabouts are you from?" She's from County Fermanagh, which is just one of the border counties. And that was in the middle of the Neustadt Valley in Austria. And I'm talking to someone who is maybe an hour's drive from me.
Wow.
Such a small world. And especially the fact that she's Irish and she's on holiday with her husband. So you never have too far to go to find someone Irish. And even in Innsbruck, the support the Irish had this year was just incredible. And the team itself, you've come from all over Ireland. Everyone just gets on so well. I love it. Like when you put on the Irish vest, it is like Paddy can even vouch here. It's just the same way if you go to represent any country, US or etc. There's just a huge pride because you know that you're representing your country. You have people back home supporting you and everyone on the team supporting you. Everyone backs each other. And I think that's what owes to our success at whatever we do in sport, politics, literature, whatever it is. And yeah, it's just a great thing. And both of us absolutely love it.
Yeah.
One thing I was really regret. I had to choose between Fuji and put my name in the hat for Worlds, and wanted to get the 100 out of the way, so I chose Fuji, and couldn't have done both of them. It wouldn't have been smart. But it was really cool to see this year. How many had we? 42.
It's the biggest Irish team I've ever been involved in since they brought all the disciplines together.
But even before it, there wouldn't be a team of that scale.
No.
So it's really goes to show like the Irish Mountain Running Association is like it's a volunteers led organization back in Ireland that put on 100 plus 150 races across the country every year, all led by volunteer race directors, volunteer participants. And they do races from 5 kilometers to 100 milers all across the country, led by like the team manager. One person we'd have to shout out, Robbie Williams, who's the head of IMRA Munster, Irish Mountain Running Association Munster, and was the high performance director for IMRA. Like one of the most brilliant humans we've met and got to work with.
Yeah. It
was so cool to see it. But one thing that I've really pissed about is Zak. In there, he's like the last year or two, he's kind of stepped into a bit of a leadership role and actually feeding back and doing himself and Sarah McCormack, who's another Irish woman who participated in the up and down and the VK, who has topped the WMRA series as well. They held, along with Robbie, a training camp for juniors back in Ireland. Last year, which is super cool. We're a small country. We're trying to get more youth involved. It's work in progress, but it's been really cool to see.
Yeah.
We had a junior team at the Worlds. It's super cool, but it all goes to volunteers who are working on it at home and people coming back to support it.
Wonderful. So let's kind of wind down here, but because we'll keep this conversation going when we do the panel. But before we go, Zak, I think maybe you could contribute to something we started talking to Paddy about earlier about the opportunity to race shorter distances now. And I think, in Europe, it's always been more important, or shorter distance races have always carried more significance. But here in the US, it's always trended towards the ultra mountain races versus, your specialty, which is kind of VK and sky race model. And I think this is one of the most exciting things about the sport. You guys are both going to be doing the VK and the 23K at Broken Arrow. So anything you want to say about that in particular, Zak, about like you being kind of part of this new guard and focusing on vertical and shorter distance racing versus, say the mountain 100-mile events? And then maybe also anything you guys want to add about Broken Arrow in particular. Paddy, I know you've been part of the race for a long time. So Zak, maybe we'll start with you and we'll close out with Paddy.
Yeah, well, I think since I've started running, I didn't start running till end of 2020. I started running, and I was straight into running when I first got picked to represent Ireland. It was a 10K uphill in the World Championships, Bulgaria. And since then, I didn't really know the ultra scene till then. I was back then, I didn't even know there was a European scene.
Yeah.
I just knew there was a World Championships, didn't know that there was all these races going on. So it's only over the last sort of 4 or 5 years when I've started to really take the sport seriously, I've seen a lot more of what you can do. And it just so happens that the VK and the uphill race is what I'm good at. And at the minute, I've no intention of really moving up in distance until I see the time where maybe it's tempting me. as I say, Broken Arrow this Sunday is going to be my longest race yet, distance wise. And like when I'm seeing people running 100 milers and all, it's like, and I'm nervous about running a 23K or 26K this Sunday. But it's all irrelevant. Everyone has their own specialties. And I think one thing I noticed that this year at the World Championships was we were on a team with VK runners, up and down runners, 42K runners and 80K runners. I think from that aspect, it's given me a newfound appreciation for how different, but also how similar the sport is. Because everyone on that team is there for the common goal of achieving their absolute best result. It doesn't have to be a World Championships. Like everyone who's racing in Broken Arrow this weekend is going there for one thing themselves. They're going to see how good they can run, and everyone's going to be cheering each other on. And for example, like I love it whenever I'm the veteran of the Irish team, as some people have called me, but I love seeing new people come into the sport, whether it doesn't matter what distance they're at, first Irish cap, or whether it's just their first race. See the pride on their face and the smile is absolutely brilliant. And especially this year, I found that there's a couple of runners in the 80K have never run for Ireland before, have never run outside of Ireland. And they see the difference. They see the community that we have in Europe, because at the opening ceremony, you see everyone who normally you don't see in their country's colours, you see in their sponsors' colours. And just everyone gets on so well with each other. And being able to hopefully be a voice for those that maybe think the shorter distances there is no opportunities. That's a lie. There's opportunities in every single branch of our sport. And it just takes, you need to go out and explore for yourself where your niche is, whether you're suited to the long stuff or the short stuff. But at the minute, the short stuff's mine. And who knows, someday I might run a 42K, but a 100 miler might be a stretch, but you never say never, you know.
Never say never.
Never say never. It's the one thing I've learned in this sport. It's given me so much, seen so many things. If it wasn't for running, I probably would never come to America. I would probably never went to Thailand.
Yeah.
So opportunities are there. Go and explore them. Don't turn down any opportunity that ever is presented to you. That's one thing I have learned. And yeah, just do it with a smile and just enjoy it.
That was beautiful. It was really, really nice way to end this. Anything you want to add there, Paddy?
Yeah, like I at times I look at over at Europe and look at like the appreciation, the elevation of the short distance races, and I keep seeing it almost happening in the US, and I really hope it's actually going to happen. I think a lot of the efforts, like the live coverage of VK and 23K, it's been elevated for at the elite level, where like this is races people can be really competitive at, and they can be really fun to watch, and they're easier to film and watch than the longer ultra. But also one thing that the shorter races, it increases access to the sport. Doing a 5K race or doing a 10K race is a much more achievable thing for someone who hasn't ran before. That's one thing we do well in Ireland. We have a lot of 5 and 10K trail races. So we could have, there's a Wednesday night trail league in the Wicklow Mountains, and there's one up in the north in the Mourne Mountains as well. He was just telling me today they have 300 people show up to a Thursday night race in the Mourne Mountains, which is huge.
Yep.
One thing, we had that a little bit, and that's how November Project got into trail running, was through the old Endurance Challenge series with the North Face. That was like that marathon relay, which is 4x10K. That got so many people into the sport. Mm-hmm. And I think we need more opportunities for that. We need more elevation of these shorter distances. Because if people see, like, there is races out there to do, but if people see elites doing them, they're going to be even more attracted towards doing it. And I think there's such a potential to elevate the sport, the elite end, but also the elites can elevate it for the general people to attract them to the sport.
Yeah. So great.
And Broken Arrow, they've done it 5 years, 10 different races. It's one of the greatest community events I've ever participated in.
It's one of the great events in the world. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And I love everything they do about it. Everything from like they're elevating artists to make the trophies, like Eleanor. They're like at the forefront of doing live coverage. Yeah. It's such a wild course. It's going to be 90% snow, which is what on earth. It's got the European vibes, starting and finishing in like a mountain town. It's stunning views, fast racing, fierce racing, tough racing. People of all different ages. There's a kids race where they're doing 400 meters, 500 meters. Everything about it. Brendan Madigan, Ethan, those lads. Yeah, they're Jeff Quine. They're doing great work.
Yeah, they absolutely are. Well, gentlemen, this has been so fun. This is so awesome. It's so great to have you in the house. Zach, I love what you said about just like, no matter what distance you run, it is the same sport, right? Like you being a 27-year-old vertical focused young gun and me being an aging like 100-mile specialist. We carry the same values. We love the same sport. It's a beautiful fucking thing. And appreciate you guys for articulating that. And I appreciate you guys for coming over, and let's keep the conversation going at the Elite Men's panel on, I guess it's Saturday. We get to do this again.
Looking forward to it.
Have you got a translator lined up?
Yeah. We'll get a translator lined up.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Gentlemen, cheers. Thanks for coming over.
Cheers,
Paddy,
guys.
congrats on Dipsea, man.
Thank you.
You're a legend.
You.
Thank you.